All right, Don, 23, 1, and 4, popular culture and the Harlem Renaissance. We're going to understand American popular culture and artistic culture during the 1920s. And the essential question here is, how does art in the 1920s reflect the life and society of the time period? So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of new and kind of creative, very uniquely American artistic forms, whether it's literary or musical. And we're going to kind of go in there and explore all of those. All right? So mass media, it really starts to take an effect on culture and kind of making it more homogeneous, making it more similar. Right? And one of the big things there is public schools. There's a lot more mandatory public schooling going on. So people are not going to work in the factories when they're teenagers. They're staying in school. They're going to high school. Right? High school used to be for students that were kind of just going to go to college, but high school kind of became more standard. You had more people attending high school. You had higher rates of literacy, more education. This helped kind of advance the economy. People were better trained. They could do more complex, harder jobs. You also had an expanding news coverage. And we saw the beginning of this in the Spanish American War with like yellow journalism, Hearst and Pulitzer. But those guys, what they were publishing would essentially be like tabloids, right? But you see, because of rising education, rising literacy, more urbanization, you see that big New York or big city newspapers start having a much wider audience, and this is kind of being a more well-read populace, a more informed populace, kind of creates a more homogeneous culture in the country. The biggest thing here is radio. You know, the 20s were the age of radio. Basically how you would go home and sit in front of your television and watch TV, watch your favorite shows on television. People in the 20s would do that on the radio. There were different programs. They would have news, they would have sports, they would have stories, they'd have plays, they'd have all sorts of kind of different programs and different things you could listen to on the radio. You know, and the radio can be broadcast over large distances. The radio can be broadcast across the country if they wanted to. You can have syndicated programs that everyone in the country could listen to at the same time. So you have this kind of very much a culture that's kind of coming together. It's not kind of uniquely to each region. You can listen to the same radio programs, the same baseball games, you know, whatever it is, you can listen to that across the country. Right? If you lived in Chicago, you can still follow the Yankees. You know, so you still had that ability. Kind of the way we kind of see the world now is kind of emerging during the 1920s. In mass media, more news, more radio is kind of a big part of that. You see that people really can kind of get more information. You know, there's more time, more money. It's an age of prosperity, right? And you see that a lot of this money gets spent in new forms of entertainment, sports, baseball mostly. Baseball is incredibly popular. The American pastime is a lot of great heroes of the time period. In baseball, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, right? These, when they played during this time period, they were immensely popular. They were huge national celebrities. And it's really the first time we've ever seen this kind of national huge celebrity. Movies, too. We have the first movie stars. We have the first talking films of sound in 1927, which dramatically increased moviegoership because movies were better. People were talking, there was sound in the movie, it wasn't just a silent film. So movies become much, much more complex, and they do a lot more with them. They're incredibly popular. People go to the movies all the time. Again, because TV, there's no TV, there's no way to watch this in your house. So movies become a big thing for people to do, spend their money, spend their free time. Charles Lindbergh is a pilot who becomes a celebrity from flying across the Atlantic by himself. He flies from New York to Paris on one trip. It's a huge deal. No one had ever really done it before. And he's this huge celebrity. He kind of falls off the celebrity train when he supports the Nazis in World War II, so people kind of lose interest in him. But during the 20s, he's a huge, huge celebrity. One of the kind of best American art forms of this time period is writing and novels, literary, right? F. Scott Fitzgerald, I know most of you read The Great Gatsby, right? It's kind of his classic book about the Jazz Age, about the 1920s, the Roaring 20s. Ernest Hemingway is also writing a lot of his books during this time too. Sun Also Rises, Farewell to Arms. These are books based on his experience in World War I as an experience after World War I. As a World War I veteran, he captured a lot of the kind of feelings a lot of World War I veterans felt wastefulness of it, the futility of it. And Hemingway's writing is very new, it's very different, it's very short, it's very to the point, it's very concise, and really changes the way a lot of people write going forward after him. The Harlem Renaissance is referred to as kind of the big growth in African American culture and mass media culture in the United States. A lot of it's kind of an effect of the Great Migration and kind of people pushing for civil rights and kind of more rights for African Americans. James Weldon Johnson becomes leader of the NAACP, kind of really advocates for African American rights, eventually gets an anti-lynching bill passed, which at the time, you think the anti-lynching bill would kind of be a no-sense bill for the country. It's actually really hard to pass because of Southern legislators. He does end up getting one passed. It doesn't have a huge effect, but it's a big symbolic victory for him. And then you also have Marcus Garvey, who's actually a Jamaican immigrant who runs the United Negro Improvement Association. Sorry, I messed that up. And he's kind of a black nationalist, and he believes that African Americans should go back to Africa and create like an African empire. He proclaimed himself the king of Africa and wore this great, crazy military uniform. You have lots of new African American writers. I know a lot of you are reading Zora Neale Hurston's Our Eyes Were Watching God. Langston Hughes is a great poet. So you see writing coming out of the African American experience in the United States. And you also see African American music, mostly through the jazz music of the time. Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington have become incredibly popular performers and musicians, and it really changes the way American music is made for the next 20, 30 years, and really for the rest of American history. All right, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, make sure to ask your history teacher.